Hello, and welcome to Hopeful Conversations. Our guest today is Maura Aarons-mele. As an extremely anxious overachiever, Maura is passionate about helping leaders understand what their anxiety is telling them and how they can put this knowledge to work. She hosts the podcast, The Anxious Achiever, is author of the books, Anxious Achiever and Hiding in the Bathroom, How to Get Out There When You'd Rather Stay Home, and is the founder of the award-winning social impact agency, Women Online, which Maura sold in 2021. Her work has appeared in media outlets such as the New York Times, NPR, the Wall Street Journal, and Harvard Business Review, and she recently won the Media Award for Mental Health America. Welcome, Maura.
Thanks, Kari. It's great to be here.
You brand yourself on the term anxious overachiever. What does that title mean, and how does being an anxious overachiever affect one's mental health?
I call myself an anxious overachiever, but I tend not to use the word overachiever for other people because that's sort of like a judgment, right? I'm not going to judge their level of achievement. So my sort of body of work is called the anxious achiever. I am definitely an overachiever, however, because I'm exhausted all the time. So that's that's the signal. A lot of us, for varying reasons, and starting when we're kids, learn that when we achieve, when we hit milestones that are externally validated by other people, we get a lot of positive feedback. Sometimes it makes us even feel loved when we don't feel loved. And so we learn that that's how life has to be. And we get really anxious about it. And we get really anxious if we feel that we aren't reaching the standards that we set ourselves, because if we're not reaching those standards, then maybe people don't love us, right? Maybe we're not worth it. And so I call people like us anxious achievers. And a lot of us are acting out of patterns we've had for decades. It's almost habitual. And the thing that is really interesting and that I found in my research and is very true in my own life is that a lot of us anxious achievers, we credit our anxiety for getting us where we are.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to be very, quote, high achieving. And so we have a really complex relationship with this anxiety because it can make us miserable. Sometimes it can land us in the hospital, as it has me. But it's what we know, and it motivates us and pushes us forward. And so we have to learn how to almost get into a relationship with our anxiety so we can manage the good and the bad.
I like that. A relationship with our anxiety.
Yep.
I don't know what that relationship quite looks like. What is it?
It's a dysfunctional relationship, obviously.
For every person and changing for every person according to where they're at?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what we realize, and this is why I'm such a fan of the neurodiversity movement in general, is that no one's brain is alike. And a lot of us have what I call tricky brains. Our brains are different, and they have incredible gifts, and they have things that are really challenging. And those brains don't change. You can't cure those brains. And so we have to learn to love our brains and play to our incredible strengths, and then build infrastructure and support when we're vulnerable, when we're challenged, when life is really hard or we don't fit in, because a lot of us don't fit in to institutions like school or work. And that's okay. But it is about being in a relationship with it.
I'm listening and processing instead of just like so quickly responding, which we tend to do as humans, because it's very, there's just so much there. Even fitting into 2023, like where we are as a society. In your opinion, what causes perfectionism?
Perfectionism is about anxiety. It's I've done a lot of work on perfectionism. I actually have a LinkedIn learning course about navigating perfectionism as a manager at work, because when I work with companies and leaders, it's something that comes up all the time. I think in America, we are obsessed with perfectionism because we think that it's about doing your best and like being the best. Again, all those markers of external achievement, but it's not. Perfectionism is anxiety. Doing excellent work is doing excellent work. Perfectionism is doing hard work, or sometimes even avoiding and procrastinating and doing no work at all, because you feel that if your work is not going to meet, again, external super high standards that you're setting yourself, you're not lovable. You're not good. And so it's anxiety.
I think I'm a perfectionist quite a bit. Some of those traits of procrastinating and just the things that I hold myself to get those like accolades that I see from others. But yeah, certainly.
It's human. I mean, I don't denigrate any of this. I mean, this is totally me too, but I think a lot of us who are motivated, who are smart, who are achievement oriented, we just put a lot of emotional importance in what we do, in outcomes. I always joke I vibrate at a 12. Like I'm just like very intense, and everything I do is going to be done at a level that is intense. And sometimes that's not healthy for us, and it's not healthy for the people around us. And so we've got to learn to modulate it.
Oh goodness, that makes me jump to something that I saw on your Instagram today that is because I was preparing for this morning, and that teens, young people who identify as depressed often are 5 times more likely to have a parent that struggles with depression.
So I really want to tell your listeners about the incredible work of Dr. Richard Weisbord, Rick Weisbord at Harvard, at the Graduate School of Education. He has a project called Making Caring Common, which is really a fabulous resource for parents who want to connect better with their kids, who worry that their kids are overly stressed out, have too much pressure on them to go to a certain college or whatever. Making Caring Common is awesome. And so this is from new research that they have done about the connection between parent and teen mental health. And it's funny. I mean, I have bipolar 2 disorder, and very strong ADHD in our family, as well as autism. And so I live this reality, and it makes sense, right? This stuff has a strong both genetic expression and epigenetic expression. And so I work with people who feel a tremendous amount of guilt that they worry that their mental health stuff is rubbing off on their kids. We all do. Of course, we're parents. But again, I think we have to have a little bit of compassion around that. Not denial, but compassion.
Compassion in the sense that it's not your fault. Self-compassion.
It's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to deal with it. I mean, I think that the thing that's so hard, right, as a parent is when you see your child suffer, of course, you want to fix it, and you instantly blame yourself for that suffering. And so I think that that's natural. It's something I personally struggle with. But, I think if you are a parent who struggles with depression or anxiety, the best thing you can do is take care of yourself and treat yourself so that you can show your kid that this is who mommy is and she's serious about it. Or if you have an older child, my kids and I all go to therapy. And we're lucky we have resources to do that. But mental health is something that unfortunately in this family we have to take very seriously. And my mental health has really affected my kids. I know it has. And trust me, I have had hours of crying in my therapist's office about that. But at the end of the day, I have to show them that I can bounce back and that I can help myself.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that. I think when I read that quote about parents, I think the guilt that I have because I don't know what Robbie struggled with. I don't know if it was depression. I don't know if it's anxiety. I can speculate. Robbie's not here. And sometimes I get triggered by stuff like that. So it's
I'm
hard. And
sorry.
no, 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 no. And and now because I'm so aware of just the things that you said of taking care of yourself, I've done tons of grief work. I do work now just for my mental wellness and my mental health, not really always related to grief because I'm in a different space now, almost 5 years later. And hopefully I am, mimicking that for other youth that aren't my children and for my daughter and for my husband and like just the world that it's okay to take care of ourselves. Like our mental health is just as important as our physical health. And for some reason, society doesn't always accept that.
Society doesn't accept that. Work doesn't accept that. I don't even think school accepts that. And a lot of us don't accept it because we weren't raised with that vocabulary, and I mean, I'm going to be 47 in 2 weeks. I grew up in a different world where we didn't talk about this stuff, but I also grew up in a family where we talked about this stuff every day. That was just the world that I grew up in. There was no shame in mental illness at all. Trust me, there was plenty of shame around a lot of other things, but not mental illness. And so I feel lucky for that, but I'm sorry, I can imagine. Do you think that Robbie had depression?
You talk about achievements. Robbie was very successful and things looked really easy to him. But in 2018, being 15 years old and social media and being exposed to things, I suspect that he was comparing himself to others and comparing to people, peers that didn't have what he had. Um, I don't know. I don't spend oodles of time speculating on what Robbie struggled with. It's not going
It's
to
not
get me
helpful.
anywhere. I'm looking about today, but certainly as a mom, like I would have liked to have known, or I would have liked to have the opportunity to help him is what I would have liked. And that's why I do the work that I do. Like I want to help parents be aware and have conversations and be able to ask questions and learn to be vulnerable with their teenagers. Parenting's tough. Parenting's really tough.
It is. It is so tough. But I feel that if you can build a shared vocabulary around feelings in the house, it's such a gift. Um, and that's something that I think about a lot.
Mm-hmm. And your children are 8 and 12?
8, 12, and 14.
8, 12, and 14.
Yeah.
Fun years. All boys at your house?
2 older boys and a little girl.
Oh, fantastic. It's a gift. It's so great. And you have like the vocabulary and then you get to bring it to the workplace too with adults, managing other adults.
Yeah. I mean, that's my total quest in life, to be honest. It wasn't what I did for a living for most of my career. I've only been doing it, sort of quote professionally, not even for a year. But I've been writing and studying about this stuff for almost 20 years, because it was always my passion. I could never figure out why work like sucked so bad for so many, and not the work itself for a lot of people that I knew who were, again, high achieving professionals, but like literally the experience of being with people all day in an office was just terrible. I mean, it had its good points, but like a lot of it was just really terrible for your mental health. And I really, wanted to join a lot of really good people who are doing work to help make that better.
Let's jump back. Pardon me. I'm going to start that question over. Let's jump back to that perfectionism piece. How do perfectionists, they often tend to overwork themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we prevent burnout? Well, that could be for teenagers, for adults, from overworking.
Overwork is, again, tricky because we as a culture idealize overwork. And I see a trend with younger people. I work mostly, I do a lot of speaking with college students and graduate students, less so with high school students, but I know this to be true, that, there is a real badge of honor with just piling on the responsibilities and overscheduling yourself. And, a lot of people think that's the number one ingredient to a successful life, right? Is I'm just going to do so much and schedule every minute and burn the candle at both ends. And of course, you can give people all the data in the world that that's not healthy, it's not sustainable, blah, blah, blah. But if it's a cultural norm that everyone values, then it's not going to change. So that's really tough. But the thing that I just try to help people with is separate working from anxiety. You can work a ton and not feel anxious, and you will have less burnout, because burnout, in my opinion, is not actually about workload. Burnout is about the stress and anxiety that accompanies the work. And so the powerful thing that we can do is change our emotional investment in the work, our anxiety around the work, and it will be easier.
That leads right into my next question. Oh my goodness. Talking about stress. Is there such a thing as good stress and bad stress? Do they look alike? Do they look different?
It's funny. Stress is actually not, it's not an emotion the way that anxiety is an emotion. So stress is a fact. I put stress on you. Working in extreme heat is a stressor. Getting hit with a deadline at the last minute is a stressor. Losing money is a stressor, right? Those are things that happen to us. They are external. The anxiety is how we respond to them and all of the complicated feelings that surround it. And that's what makes it really difficult. So I could say to you, Kari, we have to work all weekend for this client presentation, and that's how it's going to be. And you could be like, cool, I'm all in. And we could make it a non-anxious experience. And so, yeah, we're under a lot of stress, but we're going to have a good time working together all weekend, right? It's time's limited. It's an outcome that is good, that we care about. And we're not putting a ton of emotional burden, anxious thoughts from the past, anxious thoughts about the future into it. So I really love when people can also tease out stress and even fear from anxiety.
Oh, yeah, because we use the term like I'm stressed versus looking at it as the stressors.
We're
How
all
do
stressed. I mean, we are all stressed, but not all of us have the physical and emotional sort of toxic side effects of that.
how does a person um, work to like get that into two different categories, looking at as stressors versus their possible response of anxiety to that stressor?
Mindfulness, therapeutic training. I find a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, learning again to separate my thoughts and my responses to reality, right? Feelings are not facts. I always tell myself that.
Yeah.
You may feel that you're about to go broke and lose everything that you've worked so hard for, but like that's a feeling, that's not a fact. And so in the book, The Anxious Achiever, I have a lot of these exercises, but I do feel like it all comes down to mindfulness. It comes down to the ability, and this is really hard to do. And like nobody can do this all the time, but the ability to interrogate the feeling and the emotion that meets the stressor and give it a real airing.
It's nice. Yeah. No. What's a tactic that most people can do or that we can start with? Like I love to give people tools for their toolbox to be able to respond to human emotions in a higher capacity. Um,
The I'm going to give one that is one of my favorites. It's not mine. It's from Moshe Cohen, who's a negotiations expert and professor at Boston University School of Business, Questrom School of Business. And so he calls it slowing down time. This is an amazing tool because this is an in the moment thing that can really help you, right? So we all know the experience of being in a conversation with someone and having anxiety flood us, right? And so then we feel stuck because we're still, I can't just like leave the room, Kari. I'm on a podcast with you, but in my head, my body's going crazy. My heart rate's increasing. I'm distracted because I'm super anxious, right? So slowing down time, Moshe says, is this. It's taking just a minute, not even a minute, a few seconds to just breathe, right? Because breath is nature's antidote to anxiety, right? So you probably all your listeners know that, but just, subtly, if you're in a meeting, trying to breathe, trying to just get the breath into your belly and exhale, just centering yourself. And then what you're going to do is you're listening and you're going to repeat back what the person just said to you, or you're going to pose a question. Now, this question can be a benign question. It's just enough to get that person talking and occupied so that you can try to center yourself and give yourself a minute to collect and think about what you're going to say, and the other person's not noticing. And also, listening and reflecting, as you know, is so powerful, especially if things are getting tense, or, you just want to diffuse a situation, or all of a sudden you're feeling like, oh my God, I sound stupid. Just asking someone a question that they want to answer is great. It's a great tactic. I use it all the time. So slowing down time, giving yourself a minute to get sort of, as Moshe would say, sort of like cognitively put to get back together if you can, and letting that other person feel heard and talk is great.
Slowing down time.
Yeah.
I like that. From BU. My daughter is a graduate of Boston University.
Oh, awesome. I live very close to Boston University.
Do you?
Yeah.
BU is a good place.
It is.
It's out there. But not during COVID. She was out there during COVID, and that was a little rough.
No, that was bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, those tools and tactics. And I like that of coming up with a question to ask that person, because everybody loves to talk about themselves, and that giving you a little more time to take care of yourself, but you're still present. You're not checked out, because that might seem odd.
And honestly, like sometimes, if you need to pause, if you need to leave the room, go splash water on your face, go run up a flight of stairs, do it. Sometimes you have to do it because, as we know, anxiety is a full body reaction. And so sometimes you have to change your body. You can't really just change your mind that quickly.
Yeah. Are your kids getting mindfulness in school, public education? Because here in Colorado, we're not there yet. There's so much good research. I just feel like there's so many things we're not teaching in schools yet.
My kids are I live in Massachusetts, and we have we have a ton of it. And they did it at sleepaway camp. They do it at sports. So I think that mindfulness is so powerful.
It is, yeah. And I'm encouraged by that. And it's such a good thing. Until we get there as a society, like mindfulness is still sometimes a word that you use and people are like, ooh, like that person maybe practices yoga too. Like
exactly. Like you're so woo woo. So one of my favorite mindfulness things that you can do as a family, is if you're sitting down for a meal, is to just take a minute and smell what's on your plate and then close your eyes and see it. Or, there's the classic, right? Peeling an orange or biting an apple, but you can do it at mealtimes. You can have just sort of like a minute of mindfulness. And it also sort of brings gratitude, right? Because you're like, oh, that food smells really good. Mom cooked it. Go, mom. Or if you're me, it's Trader Joe's frozen, but it still smells good. I think that can be really fun to do as a family.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, goodness. What is something you wish every overachiever knew?
You don't have to overachieve all the time. And in fact, if you took 20% off, it could be a fun experiment and you might feel better.
How do we teach our kids that when they are looking at so much social media and the opportunity to compare themselves constantly to only the good that we share on social media?
Comparison is one of the biggest thought traps, cognitive distortions that we go to when we're anxious. And for most of us, it's a habitual learned behavior. And it's very human, right? Of course, we're comparing, we're human. But I think social media is terrible. I wish that every child in the world would just instantly, magically get their phone taken away and not go on it. That's how strongly I feel. And I have worked in social media for 25 years before it was social media. I hate it for children.
I'd like to add adults.
I hate it for adults.
Because it's
I don't hate it for adults. I'm sorry. I actually don't. And I make my living, like, I love online community. I mean, I think that there's power in online community and there's power in good information. However, it's the dopamine seeking behavior of social media that is, to me, really the problem. And that's just a problem. It's above my pay grade. But I think all we can do as parents, because their friends are all on it. Like my kids are always like, Mom, I'm not going to have any friends. Like, what? I can't talk to my friends. And I'm like, it's true. Is to teach them the realities of social media. People curate, people use filters. Show the kid how to use filters and change their own appearance. Show the kid how to do it. Talk about the business model behind it and that these companies literally make their money by making us seek and feel bad about ourselves, Like, I don't have any other answer than that, which is try to empower them with knowledge so that they can be cynical. Hard to do.
Yeah, and that's hard, like developmentally appropriate.
They're not ready.
Yeah, and now our kids are getting phones at I don't know the statistics, pretty darn young.
I really regret that my 12-year-old, he's now 12, he got a phone when he was 10. We did it for like logistical and safe, we
Yeah.
thought, but I feel that we opened Pandora's box. And for my younger daughter, I'm going to try to keep till 14. Not because I'm sanctimonious, but just because I do feel like if I could just get those 2 extra years. But we don't know what we don't know. Jim Steyer, who leads Common Sense Media, says, and he's been saying this for 15 years, we are conducting the largest social experiment in history on our children, and no one's in charge. That's messed up.
Yeah, it certainly is. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, and you can find the quote online, but it's Jim Steyer, who founded Common Sense Media, a great organization, and he says we are conducting this is not the exact quote, but we are conducting the largest social experiment in history on our children. And it's not an intentional experiment, it's not a controlled experiment. There's no one in charge of the experiment except big tech.
Yeah. Oh. It's just this, like, how can we get ahead of it? We're so behind. It's scary.
We can't. I mean, I do feel the horse has left the barn, and so as parents, we can only do what we can. And again, I think we have to have self-compassion for ourselves and our kids.
Yeah, it's a hard time, Maura. It's not. It's not when I'm 50, so I'm a little bit older than you. I mean, think of when we grew up, how different it is, and we sometimes I
don't know. I had a really traumatic upbringing that was full of things that my kids don't experience now. So I feel a little bit like look, I'm a nihilist. Life is hard. I don't think that life has ever not been hard. And I don't think, people have ever naturally been great and altruistic. So for me, you got to have the coping skills of the moment you live in. And, but
The coping
yes, it
skills
is
right
hard.
now seem like a lot, and
Yeah,
I,
they are.
they,
They are. They are.
goodness. So I guess I have another question, kind of working down my list here. How can chronic overachievers realign their standards to continue to achieve while also taking care of their personal needs?
That's a great question. Um, I think it comes back to a two-part exercise. One looks back and one looks forward. The looking back part is asking the question, who told me I had to be perfect? Where does this come from? And honestly, doing a little bit of work, even though it might be upsetting, to understand how you became who you are. um, that can be really helpful, and therapy is amazing for that. The looking forward piece is really, it's really a prioritization and experimenting with turning down the temperature on certain things that don't really matter. And I think that one of the things that makes you amazing is that you're amazing. And so continue to be amazing about the things that you care about and that matter. But if there are certain things that you can let go of, try. Not everything deserves your heart and soul or your best. And I think that's really important. Something I think that is really great is to have a sport that you love, but are bad at or don't care about, or a hobby that you love and you're bad at and you don't care about it. Because that can help you get reacquainted with the joy of doing, but not achieving. So I play tennis and I'm terrible at it. I do yoga. I'm terrible at it. I garden. I'm getting better, but I'm not great. And for me, and I have a friend who sings, but she's like, man, I'm never going to be a great singer, but I really love it. So I think picking something that, this is good for kids too, like you really love, but you don't care if you're the best. Or if you start caring, you can say, nope, that's not what this is for. This is not for me to be the best.
That's really good advice. We don't pick things that we're bad at and stick with them. We give up. That's not for me.
Totally.
This is
You,
just enjoying it to do it.
it's really, it's so challenging when you're used to being good at everything to be bad at something. But of course, I mean, that's the ultimate learning mindset.
Wow, that's powerful. It, to elementary gym, we did every sport, and no one's good at every sport, but you could still enjoy them. But as teenagers and adults, we don't do things anymore in that capacity.
I mean, I have a kid who his counselor at camp was like, he's such an amazing athlete. He's captain of all the teams, but we have a great theater program. We have a great art program. We have a great nature program. I wish he would experiment, push himself. And I was like, yes, how do I get him to, go and be a mediocre artist? Or maybe he will be a good artist. Who knows? But he's been acculturated because he's a good athlete. What do we love more in our culture than a good athlete? That's what he is.
Hmm. That's a good conversation. It really is. But we're wrapping up with time just to respect your time, my time, and our listeners. So I highly recommend people checking out you more on social media, checking out your resources, your book, your podcast, The Anxious Achiever. Um, I want to get this one, Hiding in the Bathroom, how to get out there when you'd rather stay home. Cause I think sometimes I like to stay home as well. But
Yes.
we end every podcast with the same question. So I'm just going to throw it out there for you, Maura. What does the world need to hear right now?
that it's okay to wait before acting, to take a minute.
Perfect. Thank you, Maura, for your time. It's so appreciated. To our guests, tune in next time to Hopeful Conversations. And remember that until then, hold on, pain ends.